Little bit different focus here. So, uh, as I often say, biblical prophecy is entirely fulfilled, but I'm starting to run into a lot of really kind of strange problems that I had never noticed. And this is kind of some loose thinking regarding the perspective and regarding some of these kind of strange thoughts. And probably the top of my mind right now is regarding the conflict of the New Testament storyline. When people talk about prophecies and all sorts of things that are unfulfilled, what I generally notice is that the perspective that a person is coming from regarding these prophecies is entirely foreign from the conflict that's presented to us in the gospel account. When you're reading the gospel, John the Baptist, Jesus, and the disciples are really the primary, if you will, good guy characters of the storyline. The good guy characters of the storyline are being persecuted by who? In every instance, it's the Jewish authority structure. They're responsible for all of the horror, if you will, of the New Testament. When you're looking at the New Testament, there's a very clear good guy. The good guy is Jesus and his disciples, the followers of Jesus, as well as John the Baptist, the promoter of Jesus. Then you have a very clear bad guy, and the bad guy is the very same group that Paul came from. The Jewish authority structure that has its power in Jerusalem, its base of power is really the temple, the central point of all Israelite religious worship. This power structure is what's throwing people out of synagogues in the book of Acts. This power structure is responsible for killing the first martyr. This power structure is responsible for killing the Messiah. It's very interesting when you look at the conflict of the New Testament storyline, really the gospel account, as well as Acts. The conflict is all coming from the Jewish authority structure. They're the people who are against Jesus being the Messiah. They're the people against people preaching the message of Jesus. The resolution of this conflict is what God promised to solve. He did solve it by destroying Jerusalem in 70 AD, most specifically the temple. The conflicts that you see today, like today, people believe Jesus is going to return to, fix the world of all of its wickedness, because no wicked generation has ever existed. No generation has ever been more wicked than us, And again, here, perspective really comes into play. Wicked according to who? I would say that no generation is more wicked than the generation that kills God in the flesh. No generation is even afforded the opportunity to be as wicked as they were in the first century. No generation can be more wicked than the people who killed God. It shows you that our perspective, our conflict perspective of what needs to be resolved, what we see as unresolved, is entirely foreign from the conflict that exists in the New Testament storyline. When you're thinking about Revelation, you should be thinking of it in light of the New Testament storyline. When you're reading about these people that are being persecuted all over the world, who's doing all the persecuting in the New Testament? It's the Jewish authority structure. Solving that conflict is what God is doing. He's already done it. In fact, to this day, the conflict of the New Testament storyline, the principal cause of that conflict, does not exist today. It hasn't existed since the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. So again, I wonder sometimes about us, and what's going to happen to people as they come to realize this. I like to think that what I'm doing is positive, being one of very, very few people that's on the opposing side to this endless stream of prophecy speculation that's just gone wild. But really think to yourself about the storyline of the New Testament. The storyline of the New Testament has one primary conflict causer. And that conflict was resolved by God 2,000 years ago in the destruction of Jerusalem. He destroyed the Jewish authority structure. It does not exist. The very power that put Jesus, took Jesus and essentially put him to death, the very power that killed the first martyr, the very power from which Paul himself came from. Paul was receiving letters from the high priest to go to Damascus, another place, to find any people who were preaching of the way, preaching about Jesus, and bring them to jail to Jerusalem. There's a section of Acts where a bunch of guys, after Paul's conversion, where a bunch of guys say, we won't eat until Paul is dead. The synagogue of Satan exists back then. It was destroyed in 70 AD. The conflict of the New Testament resolved. It doesn't even exist on the planet today. That's why I say you live in the new heaven and new earth. That's why I say all biblical prophecy has been resolved. If you look at these things according to the storyline, you'll find the prophecies are being, or have been, fulfilled a long time ago. So, kind of a short video, but there it is. That's kind of some of the area of thought I've been in recently.